took the migrant way to the west. In the daylight they scuttled like bugs to the westward, and as the dark caught them, they clustered like bugs near to shelter and to water. And because they were lonely and perplexed, because they had all come from a place of sadness and worry and defeat, and because they were all going to a new mysterious place, they huddled together, they talked together, they shared their lives, their food, and the things they hoped for in the new country. Thus, it might be that one family camped near a spring, and another camped for the spring and for company, and the third because two families had pioneered the place and founded her. And when the sun went down, perhaps 20 families and 20 cows were there.
All manner of people grew interested in Kino, people with things to sell and people with favors to ask. Kino had found the pearl of the world. The essence of pearl mixed with the essence of man, and a curious dark residue was precipitated. Every man suddenly became related to Kino's pearl, and Kino's pearl went into the dreams, the speculations, the schemes, the plans, the futures, the wishes, the needs, the lust, the hungers of everyone. And only one person stood in the way, and that was Kino, so that he became curiously every man's enemy. The news stirred up something infinitely black and evil in town. The black display was like the scorpion, or like hunger in the smell of food, or like loneliness when love is withheld.
From both sides of the valley, little streams slipped out of the hill canyons and fell into the bed of the Salinas River. In the winter of wet years, the streams ran full freshet, and they swelled the river until sometimes it raged and boiled, bank full, and then it was a destroyer. The river tore the edges of the farmlands and washed whole acres down. It toppled barns and houses into itself to go floating and bobbing away. It trapped cows and pigs and sheep and drowned them in its muddy brown water and carried them to sea. Then, when the late spring came, the river drew in from its edges and the sandbanks appeared. And in the summer, the river didn't run at all above ground. Some pools would be left in the deep swirl places under a high bank. The trees and grasses grew back, and willows straightened up with the flute debris in their upper branches. The Salinas was only a part-time river. The summer sun drove it underground. It was not a fine river at all, but it was the only one we had, and so we boasted about it. How dangerous it was in a wet winter, and how dry it was in a dry summer. You can boast about anything if it's all you have. Maybe the less you have, the more you are required to boast.
The old house, the house we left a mile away, seems to be relieved to be rid of our furniture. The rooms were relit, where we staged our meals and ceremonies and self-dramatizations, and where some of us went from infancy to adolescence. Rooms and stairways so imbued with our daily motions that their irregularities were bred into our bones and could be traversed in the dark, do not seem to mourn, as I had thought they would. The house exults in its sudden size, in the reach of its empty corners. Floorboards, long muffled by carpets, shine as if freshly varnished. Sun pours unobstructed through the curtainless windows. The house is young again. It too had a self, a life which for a time was eclipsed by our lives. Now, before its new owners come to burn it, it is free. Now only moonlight makes the floor creak. When, some mornings, I return to retrieve a few fine ornaments and diamonds, picture frames, the space of the house greets me with virginal impudence. Opening the front door is like opening the door to the cat who comes in with the morning milk, who mews in passing on his way to the beds still warm with our night's sleep, his routine so tenuously attached to ours by a single meow and a shared roof. Our house forgot us in a day.
Back from vacation, the barber announces, or the postman, or the girl at the drugstore, now 10. They're amazed to find the workaday world still in place, their absence having slipped no cloaks, their customers having hardly missed them, and there being so sparse an audience to tell of the wonders. The pyramids they have seen, the silken warm seas, the night times of marimbas, the purchases achieved in foreign languages, the beggars, the flies, the hotel luxury, the grandeur of marble cities. But at customs, the humdrum pressed its claims. Grey days clicked shut around them, the young still fit, warm as if never shut. The world is still so small, the evidence says. Their cry though, not so.
At the age of 17, I am poorly dressed and funny looking, and went around thinking about myself in the third person. Alan Dow strolled down the street and home. Alan Dow smiled with a thin, sardonic smile. Consciousness of a special destiny made me both arrogant and shy. Years before, when I was 11 or 12, just on the brink of ceasing to be a little boy, my mother and I, one Sunday afternoon, my father was busy or asleep, hiked up to the top of Shale Hill, a child's mountain that formed one side of the valley that held our town. There the town lay under us, all under, perhaps 1,000 homes, the best and biggest of them climbing Shale Hill toward us. And beyond them, the blocks of brick houses, 1 and 2 family. The homes of my friends sloping down to the pale thread of Buchanan Pike, which strung together the high school, the tennis courts, the movie theater, the town's few stories and gasoline stations, the elementary school, the Lutheran church. On the other side lay more homes, including our own, a tiny white patch placed just where the land began to rise toward the opposite mountain, Cedar Top. There were rims and rims of hills beyond Cedar Top, and looking south we could see the Pike dissolving in other towns and turning out of sight amid the patches of green and brown farmland. And it seemed the entire county was lying exposed under a thin veil of haze. I was old enough to feel embarrassment standing there alone with my mother, beside a wind-stunted spruce tree on a long spine of shale. Suddenly she dug her fingers into the hair on my head and announced, "There we all are, and there will all be forever." She hesitated before the word forever, and hesitated again before adding, "Except you, Alan, you're going to fly." A few birds were hung far out over the valley at the level of our eyes, and in her impulsive way she had just plucked the image from them, but it felt like the clue I had been waiting all my childhood for. My most secret self had been made to respond, and I was intensely embarrassed, and irritably ducked my head out from under her melodramatic hand.